Welcome, welcome everyone. Welcome to the first gender talk of the spring 2024 semester. Folks will continue to trickle in. As you do, please don't forget to sign in and please do grab a bite as it's hard to navigate back and forth during the talk. My name is Dr. M Shadi Malaklu, and I am profoundly privileged and honored to be the director of the Bell Hooks Center and the chair of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies. I would like to begin by acknowledging that our center and college are located on the ancestral homelands of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, the Cherokee Nation, the Shawnee Tribe, and the Yuchi. We recognize that their material and spiritual relationships with these lands and waterways precede ours. We also recognize that sovereignty for them has persisted despite their continued removal. We recognize that there is no land statement that could accurately and sufficiently account for this violence. And so rather than attempt one, I will ask us to do better and hold the Bell Hooks Center accountable so that we can all disrupt settler systems of domination in the interest of decolonizing our minds, our land, and the ways that we exist in this world. I'm excited to welcome today founder of the Nat Ministry, Tricia Hersey. Tricia has over 20 years of experience as a multidisciplinary artist, writer, theologian, and community organizer. As the founder of the Nat Ministry, Tricia is the originator of the Rest as Resistance and Rest as Reparations frameworks, creating sacred spaces where the liberatory, restorative, and disruptive power of rest can take hold. Her work is seated within the soils of Black radical thought, somatics, Afrofuturism, womanism, and Black liberation theology, and is a guide for how to collectively deprogram, decolonize, and unravel ourselves from the wreckage of capitalism and white supremacy. In today's talk entitled Rest is Resistance, Our Divine Right to Rest, Tricia asks, what would it be like to live in a well-rested world? She invites us to engage with the Rest is Resistance framework, rooted in Black liberation theology, womanist theology, spirituality, and a politics of refusal. Her talk will explore the tenets of the Nat Ministry and uplift the following questions. How can we be more human when capitalism attempts to degrade our divinity by viewing our bodies as mere machines? How can we resist the constant pull of the grind culture in our lives? How do we cooperate to craft a world in which all bodies can thrive? How do we rest in a culture that glorifies urgency and busyness? How do we dream ourselves free? Today's respondent is Assistant Professor of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, Dr. D.P. Patrick. Dr. D.P. describes themselves as a scholar, activist, educator, facilitator, and artist, poet, creator. Their scholarly and activist work focuses on trans, feminist, and queer autonomous politics, radical geographies and placemaking, queer and feminist ecologies, activist archiving, and transversal movements for social transformation and collective liberation. Each spring, they teach the department's Feminist and Queer Disability Studies course, coded as WGS 206, in which they teach the Nat Ministry's tenets and Tricia's book, Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto. I also learned that Tricia is coming out with a new book in November, so please stay tuned for that. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the hard work of my colleagues, namely our student program associates. You met one of them, Adriel Roca, at registration, and our program associate, Kat Moses. Woo! Without them, none of what we do would be possible. I also want to extend a very hearty thank you for the incredible generosity of the Department of Studies in Religion and Spirituality for their co-sponsorship of this event. Please join me in welcoming Tricia Hersey to the Bell Hooks Center, Berea College.
Trisha, before you start, can I just clip this to you, or you can clip it to you?
Oh, yeah, please, you can touch it. Thank you. Hey, y'all. Oh my God, hi Kentucky. I'm so happy to be here. Let me just look at y'all. Like y'all are so gorgeous. This space is so gorgeous. When I got the invitation, I was like, absolutely yes, I'm coming for a couple of reasons. Because I love bell hooks. I feel like I'm a daughter of her scholarship. I mention her a lot. Without her work, the tenets and the rest of the resistance really would not exist. And also, I have to say, I love bourbon. So I'm a bourbon girl, and I did the Kentucky Bourbon Trail once in Louisville, and I love the food here. I love the people. It's just a beautiful place. And I want to start, this will be like a very slow and rooted and grounded talk. It's not going to be very stuffy and academic. I love that you guys are laying down. This space feels like a incubator for rest and naps, just the way it feels in here with the chairs. And so just, close your eyes, listen, feel like this is a moment to have a pause, a rest break in your busy day of being students here. I'm going to start with a poem from my book from the section called Dream. Close your eyes and maybe meditate with me. Rest is real life conversations. I don't know any other way to go. Rest is the roadmap, the guiding force, a truth teller. Rest is a meeting with self with a typed agenda. Rest is on your knees whispering words silently on the right side of your bed. Rest is lunchtime dreaming. The energy of the Rastafarian who showed me how to pray while standing up with my eyes open, hands stretched wide. Because how will you see and know when prayers are answered? Rest is holy oil from my mama's wooden dresser, Pompeian olive oil, the fancy kind in glass, blessed by the elders, poured over our heads as we rebuke the devil. Rest is the laying on of hands, a force field all around you. Rest is a dream made real, a portal, an honest place, a trusting place, a sacred refuge, a dissertation length longing. Rest works, rest dreams, infinite power moving, care surrounding us. Rest is a gift and an antenna, an ancient call dangling on the tips of tongues. From my head lightly connected on a silk pillow. Rest is holding us close. Rest is home. Hey, y'all. What a joy to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much for holding space with me today. I'm so honored to be in community with you all, the students, the staff, the faculty, the learners, the readers, the healers, the dreamers, and the hopeful. Give yourselves a round of applause, a hug for coming out and being so curious. Being so curious. Being so curious about the ways in which rest is a political refusal against capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, ableism, and all the interconnected toxic systems causing us harm. Deep gratitude to the Bell Hooks Center for the invitation to celebrate and collaborate with your Gender Talk programming, and for trusting me to bring a word of care to Kentucky, to Lexington, and to you guys. What a moment and what a time right now in our history to come together to celebrate rest, to celebrate hope, to celebrate community care. Since 2016, I've been experimenting with the radical idea of rest as a form of resistance, of rest being a form of reparations, of rest being the foundation for our liberation and our freedom. of rest being a disruption and a pushback against the toxic systems that don't see us as humans and not worthy of care or freedom. But I'm here today in all ways to say that all the things that we have been taught about our labor and our worth by the cranking gears of grind culture are not true. It's all a lie. They are all lies. And we are enough now. We are divine. We are miracles. We don't have to do another thing. Our divinity grants us this. Our birth honors that. We are humans. Whenever I get a chance to speak, most times I speak about my grandmother, or Caston, the muse of this work. I uplift her in my book. I put up photos of her. She literally is the one who kind of gave the framework for the idea of imagination and hope. And in my book, I name her as the muse. And so I want to uplift her because it's so important to uplift our ancestors, and we can see them as guides in our lives, that we call out their name. The ancestors want to be remembered by their names. They want to be called by their names. And so I'm going to tell a short story about my grandmother, Aura. And I'm going to teach you a practice that she taught me. So my grandmother was a refugee of Jim Crow terrorism. She lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And like millions of other Black Americans during the Great Migration of the 1950s and 60s, she decided that she would never see another lynching, that her children would not have to be afraid of the KKK coming, that she would build a spaceship out of uncertainty and float up north to Chicago. So she landed in Chicago, like many other Black Americans during this migration from the South to the North, looking for hope, believing that they would see better, and moving. And I always like to uplift that they were refugees. They weren't just leaving because they wanted to leave, they were running for their lives from the terrorism that Jim Crow in the Deep South offered to them. And so once my grandmother landed in Chicago, she landed on the South Side, where I'm from, South Side forever. And she began working 2 jobs, raising 8 children. So she had 2 jobs. One job, she worked as a CNN nursing assistant at like a psychiatric hospital, cleaning. And then another job, she cleaned for a white family in the very wealthy part of north side of Chicago. And in between her 2 jobs, she sat on her yellow plastic cover couch. Who knows about the plastic cover? Okay, okay, they don't do it anymore, but the couches lasted with that plastic covering. So, yeah, they were sticky, but she sat on this yellow cover, plastic cover couch, and she closed her eyes and she rested. I always thought she was sleeping. Like all of my cousins, it was 8 children, so there's dozens and dozens of cousins running in and out of the house, jumping in and out, building things in the backyard. She'd be sitting on that couch holding space with her uniform on between her next job, and she would be resting her eyes every day for 30 minutes to 1 hour. And I will always say to my cousins, stop running, stop jumping. Grandma is asleep. Chill out. You know, I was always trying to hold space for her sleeping when I thought I said, Grandma's asleep. And without opening her eyes, without missing a beat, she'd say, I'm not asleep. Every shut eye ain't sleep. I'm resting my eyes. I'm listening to God. Sometimes she would just say, I'm listening. Sometimes she would say, I'm listening to the universe. I'm listening. I just think about that when all of culture was trying to crush her, poverty, the racism that still was alive and well in the North. So many left the South thinking that they would find better, and it was just as horrible there. It was just in a different type of white supremacy. It was a Northern white supremacy, but yet still she was fighting poverty, racism, trying to be a woman, suffering from PTSD because she actually told me she saw a lynching in Mississippi. And she said she knew once she saw that lynching that's when she knew she had to go because they wouldn't get her or her children. So they were on the run. The KKK and the lynchings in the South were some of the most horrific crimes that were being committed. And so she left, and suffering from that PTSD, she sat every day resting. What that taught me is that no matter what, our bodies, this divine dwelling place belongs to us. No matter if we have money, money to go on retreat, money to go to a spa, money to buy a beautiful mattress, money to take, there's moments in time that we can reimagine rest and be subversive and find ways to create temporary spaces of joy and freedom for ourselves. She did that in these 30 to 1 hour little resting moments. And what downloads was she receiving in those moments? What was she honoring? What was she hearing? Because rest is a portal, and it's a portal for our imagination. It's a portal for our healing. What was she feeling in those moments of 30 minutes to an hour of resting her eyes and listening to the downloads available to us when we slow down? And so right now, I love to honor her in this ability to rest our eyes with this practice. So I want you to rest your eyes collectively. We close our eyes, you get comfortable. I'm going to time us. And in honor of my grandma Aura, and in honor of the ability to know that we belong to ourselves and we can find rest wherever. We can find moments to slow down whenever and wherever our bodies reside. We're going to close our eyes, feel our bodies, take deep breaths in, have a little silence. We're going to do a few minutes. We will rest. This work is a battle cry for being sick and tired of capitalism and white supremacy. A resting place, an alternative and temporary space of joy and freedom. The way both systems view human bodies is evil and unsustainable. No one is being seen clearly within them and instead are viewed as less than human and a machine to be used, abused, and overlooked. This is a meditation on rest as resistance. This is a meditation on rest as reparations. This is a reverberation for my ancestors. May my deeds in this life please them. May the bass of drums shake liberation from trees. May you join us as we rest. The NAP ministry is for the softening, for the resistance. This rest is resistance message is for us to hold in our hands, hug while we sleep, and lay down as we think about all the ways our bodies can hold space for liberation. Resting our bodies and minds is a form of reverence. And when we honor our bodies via rest, we are connecting to the deepest part of ourselves. We are freedom making. What stories are we holding deep inside that are untold and uncovered because we are too exhausted? This rest work is holding space for our memories, our micro histories, and all the things that make us human. The idea of rest as resistance and reparations can be challenging to distill in a few lines when I'm asked to do a quick take. It's counterintuitive to believe rest to not be a place to waste time, but instead a generative place of freedom. We have never learned this in this culture. The thought of not doing for even a few seconds, for even a few minutes, for a day is seen as lazy and unproductive. So an explanation of rest as a form of justice is layered and nuanced. I have learned that the most concise way to explain this and to share the true message is to say, rest makes us more human. It brings us back to our humanness. To be more human, to be connected to who and what we truly are is at the heart of this rest movement. Capitalism, grind culture, going, this cult of busyness, it keeps us in a cycle of trauma. Unable to give our bodies and minds the gift of rest and slowing down. And we must refuse to grind and burn out our divine, precious bodies to the brink of exhaustion. To heal from grind culture and this cult of business, we must see ourselves and see rest and demand for community care always as our guide. Here are some questions to think about. You may never be able to answer all these questions, but that's the beauty. That's the beauty of not knowing and not having to know everything. The culture teaches us we have to have everything figured out. There's no space to experiment, to be curious, to fail, to try, to see. This entire work that I'm doing is a place of pure curiosity. I had no idea when I started resting for myself with negative $25 in my account, out of grad school, debt up to here, couldn't find a job nowhere. I literally went on 20 job interviews. I have a seminary degree from one of the top seminaries in the world, and I would go into the interviews and I would literally have spiritual direction chaplaincy sessions with the people. They would be in there crying to me like, "Oh my God, my daughter is on drugs. Can you pray for me?" I was like, "I'm gonna get this job." Like we feeling each other, you know. I would leave out and they would be like, "We're with someone else." So maybe this was the calling, and so the curiosity and courage I had to just follow the call of this. I was so curious about what rest was doing for my own life. I didn't know if it would be the same for others, but what it had did for my life, it saved my life. And so from that curiosity, I leaped without a net. I trusted myself and my body more than I trust these trashy systems. I trust myself. I don't trust capitalism. I don't trust white supremacy. I don't trust patriarchy. I trust me and I trust my ancestors and the creator to guide me. The second tenet of the NAP ministry is our bodies are a site of liberation. So what that means is wherever our bodies are, we can find rest, we can be subversive, we can escape, we can find ways to hold each other and ourselves in deep radical care because community care will save us. Self-care will help us. Community care will save us. Yes, thank you for clapping. Yes. I love that. I'm from the black church, so you got to talk back to me and holler and I love that. So community care is what this work is held under. The radical community, like Bell Hooks said, we will not heal alone. There's no healing that happens when we're alone. Oh, really? Ah, I didn't even see that. Yes, I'm on it. I felt the energy. It's one of my favorite quotes by her. So I want to give some of these questions and inquiries because I want to offer this to you as something to hold space in your imagination and your curiosity as you're navigating the world. You may never finish these, you may never answer them all, but you can use them as a guide to journal, to think, to settle into your own understandings. How can we be more human when capitalism attempts to degrade our divinity by seeing our bodies as mere machines? How? How can you resist the constant pull of grind culture in your life? How do we reclaim our time? What story are you telling yourself? What's a more liberating story you could tell? How can you create rest for yourself and others in this moment in life? Are there moments of laser focused connection you can give to connect your body and mind? Because that's what rest is. It's a connection to your body and mind. It's slowing you down enough that you connect. So we have to reimagine what resting is. It's not just a nap tucked away with the door closed, away from your family, with a blanket up to your neck. I'm with that. Give it to me now. But we have to be expansive in our imagination of what resting is. Resting is meditation, it's dance. I used to take ballet. Some of my deepest dance moments were in ballet classes. Thank you. Can you slow down more? And can you do less? I believe that we do all these things by reimagination. We do all these things in community with each other. We do it slowly. We take our time with radical faith in a constant experimentation centered in rest and community care. We don't have to figure this all out right now. Rest is a meticulous love practice that will be happening for the rest of our days. And for that, we should give thanks. We don't have to rush our own healing. We rush everything else. Everything else is so urgent. Everything else is so rushed. Everything else is now. We don't have to rush our own healing. I want to end right now with just reading a little bit of the conclusion of my book, Rest is Resistance. Go to the water. Go to the depths of the ocean inside of you. Float there. Rest there. Imagine and dream there. It is game over for the lies of white supremacy and capitalism. We know better. The veils have been lifted, and with each nap we take, we are closer to seeing ourselves for who we truly are. We know this will not be easy, as the systems will most likely gain more power before they ultimately burn themselves out. As we collectively rest and unravel from our alignment with grind culture, layers are peeled back to show the truth of ourselves. We are more than what we have ever been told, and we must continue seeing each other and ourselves, no matter how distorted and exhausted we show up. Take to your beds. Accept all you have ignored and then rest more. What does your body want? What does your soul need? What are the whispers that have been silenced by the cranking gears of grind culture? What have we missed in our urgency and in our rushing? This is just the beginning, and for this truth, we must be grateful for the awareness and the information. This is a transmission, a manifesto for the rest pilgrimage. Come back to it often, keep it close. The messages will keep repeating. View it as evidence that you are not alone in your desire to be liberated from exhaustion. You're not alone. Our battle cry and our mantra, we will rest. Say it in your hearts. Whisper it aloud. Repeat it as you fall asleep. Tell your neighbor, we will rest. We will rest. We will rest. Thank you guys. Oh, that's actually the name of my new book. We
Yes.
will rest. A little leak there for the people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Should I sit here?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a feeling that I have more than a word or a sound. It's Thank you.
I love that.
It comes from here. This is a dream. You know, welcome to the dream space. It's like the opening line of your book, and I want to, in addition to reiterating my gratitude to Dr. M, to Kat, to all of the program assistants who did the labor to make this moment of collective contemplation around rest possible. I also want to name a lineage. You know, Dr. M mentioned that I teach this feminist and queer disability studies course, which is part of this new curriculum. And to me, you know, your work is work of lineage.
Yes.
The work of imagination is the work of remembering. You know, remembering that the vision of the future was already a seed in the past.
Yeah.
So thank you for calling the name of your grandmother.
Thank you.
Norma Jean also used to rest her eyes.
Yeah.
And there's a more proximate lineage, and part of my work as a respondent, just briefly, because this room has things to say, you know, this room has things to feel, is to situate us here. I think we all might have a sense of why the message of rest is needed at Berea. And it was because of the imagination of Illy Dennis.
Yeah, Illy.
The WGS 200, who came to me, you know, as we were working through these archives, saying, I'm exhausted. And I said, what if your work is to rest? What if your archive is to rest? And you picked up this book, we picked up this book together, Kat was reading this book, and we just started to dream into it. I don't think either of us had a clear idea of what your archive of rest would look and feel like, but you installed yourself right there, as you are installed now, resting.
Yes.
And it was from the seed of that practice, that willingness to say, I don't know how. And many students in my class now say, I don't know how. That fear you described.
Yes.
I might have to grieve. I asked yesterday in class as we read the opening pages, you know, I said, I want to call you Reverend Hersey.
You can. You can.
Says, you know, when we rest, we have to grieve.
Yes.
And I said, does that scare anybody? And the answer was, yeah, it does. And so it's through Illy's work in resting and the sort of communal context of being like, let's keep going, that we then read your book, that we then created in last year's iteration of the class, the zine. This is my Oprah moment. Look under your chin. The zine that I want you to take with you, right? Created by your colleagues, by your coworkers, called Betray Berea Busy. And it, like the ministry, is a demand.
Yeah.
It is a demand. So that's your parting gift.
Beautiful.
So really, I won't say much more other than to honor that lineage, to honor also the presence of some folks who are in the iteration of the class now, and to say, do you feel it? There's a couple other words that you spoke that I just want to put into the air, to like put some air underneath as we open up the room, which is practice.
Yes.
It's a practice. You know, there's so much I can't. Reaction.
Yeah.
Practice makes practice. It is not easy to stop.
No.
We all can name the problem. Berea busy. Yeah, just to say, we talked a little bit about it before the talk, but I shared with you that, there's this phenomenon. We have a local iteration of grind culture called Berea busy.
Wow.
And this refers to the reality that you can see in the zine that it seems like every minute, especially, and I like to say coworkers, students, my coworkers, especially for my coworkers who are students, it feels that every minute of every day is planned, is scheduled, is spoken for, to the point that eating, using the bathroom,
oh my gosh,
right, sometimes feels out of reach. So in the face of all of that, I understand the gripping fear that can happen when somebody says, you can stop. What happens if you stop? What are the consequences? And what collective responsibility do we have as folks in this institution to do that patient, practical work of dismantling it? Not just pointing and saying, let's not be busy. To actually do the patient work of dismantling it. You're going to see my class out there napping. Please join us. Please join us. Join us in saying no to that one thing. And I'm in it too, right? I have a lot of unlearning to do. So that's just a little context on Berea busy. I'm sure y'all have more to say about that. But it requires all of us, no matter what level of the institution we're at, to be willing to betray that idea and that false promise that this is going to get us to a better place. It's not. Thank you for speaking that it's a lie. And together we can move toward the truth that, as Reverend Hersey teaches us, our collective rest will save us. So with that, I open the room in gratitude and excitement for all of you to be in dialogue. And thank you so much for bringing this message and this ministry to us.
Thank you. Yeah. Beautiful. Anybody have a
Should I walk the mic around?
Yeah, probably.
So So we'll just open it up, and I'll be the. This is where I get to be the game show host.
You totally are game show.
So we'll just walk around the room. Open it up to questions, shares, gratitude, whatever's on your heart and in your spirit.
I love that.
Yeah. The invitation from Reverend Hershey was to be in flow, and I felt it.
I love a flow, a vibe. Any questions?
And if you could just say your name, if you wish to share your pronouns and all those things.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for speaking. I never really thought about rest as like resistance before. But my question is, as far as your philosophy of like divine rest, how do you think that you can translate that ideology to people who aren't as acquainted with divinity or aren't as connected to religion?
Sure, totally.
How can you translate that to be more accessible?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for the question. Yeah, this work is totally secular. I have a background in theology, but my background, that's a new background. My background since I've been 18 years old is that of a community organizer and activist. My dad was a union organizer, former Black Panther, Black radical, very much about the community. I'm from Chicago, so I come out of grassroots organizing. No one is gonna save us but us. My house was full of people. My mother is cooking tacos while they're planning direct actions. That's how I grew up. And so the theology part of my life and work came later. I just finished my seminary degree. And so I made this work intentionally secular. In the book, I don't mention anything about organized religion except the fact that I talk about my dad's past and how I grew up. But I wanted this work to really be a political refusal and social justice work. And so it resides in social justice. And I think the idea of being divine is a human thing. It's a human rights work. It's human rights work to look at someone and say, out of my lineage as a Black person who comes from a lineage and descendant of enslaved people, slavery, sharecropping, Jim Crow terror, in a culture like this, as to be in a Black body, a woman in a Black body, I've been told that I'm nothing. I'm not even a human being. My the autonomy of my ancestors' bodies was nothing. And so I think when you think about humanity and humanness, you have to tap into the idea that we are miracles and we are divine. When you think about how we were born, like the idea of our birth. I'm a science nerd, so I love to study the idea of science and think about to be the person who came through, like to be birthed and come through the womb of a mother and you're now here on this earth. Like that is not, in my opinion, by chance, and that is a deep miracle when you imagine what could have happened, right? And so I think that's such a great question that you asked because when I started the work, I came right out of seminary, but I was very intentional. I do not want this to be anything out of theology, out of religion. A person can come and be an atheist. They could come and they could be any religion or non-religion, and they are just a human being who is sick and tired of being treated like they're not human. This is about worth, human worth. Like you are worthy to be alive. In a culture like this, capitalism teaches you you're not worthy until you produce enough. You're not worthy until you have things checked off on your, list, until you have produced enough for their system. To you, like you're a tool for a capitalist system. That's what capitalism really truly is saying to us. And then white supremacy continues to degrade us, and then patriarchy does it, and then ableism. And so we have all of the things on top of each other that's looking at us and saying, this human who was born and placed on this earth is nothing until they complete these things. If she's a woman, then she's definitely underneath a man. If she's black, then she's definitely not even seen as a human being, And so I love that you asked that question because I hope that the work speaks in that way, that it speaks from a place of social justice and humanity work and human work. All of my guides through this work have been Bell Hooks and Toni Morrison and James Baldwin and people who really uplift Cornel West, people who just uplift the ideas of humanness and humanity. And so this is a human rights work, it's social justice, it's a political work, really. People always say, this is wellness work, and I love it. I was like, do not call this wellness work. I get so mad. Like, I've literally went off on so many reporters who've been like interviewing me, like, talk about this wellness. I said, it's not wellness. This is political work. This is social justice work. This is not a wellness movement. This is a movement of political refusal. We're trying to disrupt and push back against two toxic systems, capitalism and white supremacy, via our rest, via our reclaiming our bodies and our time and our humanity as our own. Because both these systems say you don't belong to none of that. Only thing that you're on is the clock. Make money, go, produce for a system. Once you die, we'll put another person in your place. My father passed 40 years, he worked for the railroad. The next day they had the job description up. They had the job description up. They came and brought his box to our Ohio home of his stuff from the desk and was like, "Thank you." And they had so when I talk about the violence of capitalism, it's really the root of it is trying to say, no, that is a lie. That's not true. We are human and we are enough, and our worth as humans is not tied to how much we can accomplish or how much we do. So thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Hope it answered a little.
I'm Indigo with
Hi.
pronouns. So I love all these sentiments, but not but in
Yeah.
how would you apply this to what a lot of students here feel like if they don't accomplish,
Yep.
if they don't do it, they won't live the life that they want,
Of
or
course.
even a life that'll sustain them.
Yeah.
How would you respond to people who are sort of stuck in that
Totally.
capitalistic
Yeah.
system?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Indigo.
I like that. Your name is gorgeous too. Such a great question. I'm the perfect person to answer because that was literally my life. Like I literally, when I'm not telling any type of tales. When I was literally in graduate school, killing myself with the schedule. You think your schedule is something? I was up I have it in my book, the schedule. 5 in the morning, I was up, and sometimes I didn't go to bed till 3 in the morning. So we're almost at 24 hours, and I had a 6-year-old son at the time. Was not working. My husband was making minimum wage, trying to struggle. I mean, it was a time, and I come from a legacy of poverty. Like I'm the only person in my family who's ever went to graduate school or college, and my parents are blue collar steel mill workers from Chicago, like Midwest working. And so for me to say to myself, I'm going to stop, it was very scary. But what I'm trying to offer to people is this idea of reimagination, of saying it's not a binary. It's not either rest or either kill yourself and be burnt out. There is more in the middle. There's some time, there's some middle ground, there's some expansiveness around the idea of slowing down and seeing rest as not just one thing. And so when you say we have to stop, I understand you have schedules, you're working, but I started this work while I was in graduate school. So in between class, you will find me laying on the quad. Everybody knew Tricia, where Tricia at? She sleep. So when my friends from graduate school see I started this order, they said it makes sense because you slept literally through your entire degree. I went to my account teachers and said, I may not, if I'm going to come to this class, I'm gonna get the attendance credit, but some of my things may be late. Some of my work may be late. I asked for grace and mercy, please. And they were like, okay, thank you for asking. We'll see what we can do. And so I really began to find moments to create these little moments of rest and slowing down and meditation. I was taking ballet classes, which felt like rest to me during when I was in school. Anytime I didn't stay up really late to study. I used to stay up all night. Our library at school was open 24 hours a day. So you can like literally live there, and they have showers there. Like you literally could live at the library. I had friends who would sleep under the tables with sleeping bags. It was that type of study rigor. And I would sometimes go home and put the I would just fall asleep reading, and the book would be on my chest. And then I will wake up and take the test and be getting B's and A's. I'm like, how? I didn't even read that. But I think that when we think about the neurology in our brains, that when you are learning so much, slowing down and actually taking breaks allows your brain to download that information. It's actually really, you need to rest more. And the more I rested, the better grades I got, actually. That's a little tip there. Like the more I just was taking little moments to catnap in between class, not staying up as late, finding moments to like be outside and look at the sky. Daydreaming is a form of rest. So I daydreamed on my way on the train every morning because I took the train from home, the subway, and I would just look out the window and daydream the entire time and just close my eyes. And so I'm offering to you the idea of maroonage, where you're going to have to create your own spaces of rest because the system is not going to give it to you. Just accept that. Just begin to grieve that there won't be a red carpet laid out. Be like, oh my goodness, here comes the people. Let them rest. And they're not going to give you blankets. Like, you're going to have to be subversive and be on some real, like, making some gangster decisions. You're gonna have to just really dig in and like this is a resistance. In that way, you're gonna have to find a moment and to share space with your community to make time to rest. I had a boss at work. I worked at the library, and she would see me sleeping in the stacks. The stacks go underground, sometimes 3 levels down, and I would be asleep in a corner. And she would see me and she would not wake me up. She would let me get paid to be on that time. And she was like, I know you're exhausted. So I give thanks for this white woman who was just like, I see you. Like I see you're exhausted. You can still stay on. I'm gonna pay you. I know you were asleep. I know you weren't at work. But I'm not gonna trip on that. And so I feel like we have to begin to have this collective care about each other and help each other and begin to understand that it's not gonna be an either or thing. Like it's not going to be if I stop, I'll be homeless. And poverty is a real thing. I won't get the good grades. Like that's the fear, and that's where they want you. They want you to be in this fear place of thinking if I even stop for a moment, I'm going to be, downtown and not have a dime. And it's like actually, if the community supports us, that won't happen. And actually, the more you rest, the more the portals for new ideas will come to you. You'll get better grades. Like read, if you're interested in science, The Science of Sleep is a beautiful book that actually talks about the idea that creatives and people who are learning and people who are learning new information need rest. They need moments to break the brain so that you can have these brain breaks where you can have time and you'll actually see that you'll be able to remember more. Your grades may get better. You'll be able to connect your work to what you're doing a little better. You won't just be in zombie mode. You'll be more back to your humanness and not be a machine. And so find ways to find little places. And in my book, I have a list of things that look like rest, that are rest. It's like a list of all the ways that you can rest that are reimagined outside of what the system has taught you what it is. So that's what I would say about that. Yes. Dr. M.
Apologies, Reverend Hershey. I'm going to try to put some of this in conversation with the course that a lot of students in.
Okay, what's good?
So the course is called Animals, Monsters, and Others No Mind.
I love that.
And I started the course telling my students about my own maternal grandmother who raised me in a Vale in suburban California without even a birth certificate, let alone a birth date. And when she came here, she told my mom, or she said rhetorically in front of my mother, "Oh God, why didn't you make me worthy like a dog?" Seeing the way Americans treated their domestic animals.
Yeah.
Of course, now we're seeing Palestinians described as inhuman animals.
Yeah.
And in the class, we read about disability justice connected to animal rights. Because if you are not a productive body, right, you are better off, quote unquote, dead, right, or in need of a cure. And a student of ours talked about living on a farm and being told by her grandfather to go pick the stupidest looking chicken to kill first. And so I'm wondering, how do we think about this outside of the exceptionalism of humanism?
Yes.
Right? Because we're not, Frederick Douglass talked about the horse, the ox, and the mule, these production yielding animals. I mean, we're not killing them, right? We're killing like the lazy pig, right? Cow. And so I wonder if we can think about this outside of the human.
Yes, I love that. That's what I want to take that class. Can I audit and sit in? I think that is so brilliant because my I guess I'll talk about when I was in graduate school, I was an archivist. And so I was studying cultural trauma and Black liberation theology. And so one of my student jobs, one of the two I had, was archivist assistant in the manuscript rare books library. So I was in the African American collection. And being in the South, I was in Georgia. And so being down in Georgia, I was able to get my hands on some pretty remarkable documents, like all the plantations are down there. Like right now, I live on Plantation Parkway. That's it's like 30,000 places in Atlanta named Plantation. So because there were so many plantations where the area I live in, and so I was able to get my hands on so many documents of like ledgers from plantations where they're like doing their taxes and they're listing things, and I'm holding it's a real ledger from the actual plantation in Douglas, Georgia, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, he's listing all his assets. He has $100, okay, a horse, $100, okay, and then he has the sugar thing that he works on, that's 200. Oh, a black child, $25. And I had to sit with that. I said a horse was worth more than a human being. And then this work really when I was resting. At the same time I was resting, I also was in these archives looking at some really violent things around the trauma and studying Jim Crow terrorism, and seeing what capitalism is. I think we also ignore that. We say, oh, capitalism. We don't understand. Capitalism was built on the backs of indigenous people and on African people. They use black bodies as the first capital for the whole culture. They experimented with what a body could do. How could we mechanize a body? How can we make a body a machine? Could they work 20 hours on the plantation without a break? Could women give birth and then once the baby came out, go back to work the same day? Yes, they did all these things. 500 pounds of cotton is probably cotton that would go up to the ceiling. You had to get that for the day. You had to pick 500 pounds of cotton for the day. So I do a lot of work with cotton and my installation work. I did an installation piece where I got cotton and put it up so people can see, put on their eyes what this agriculture was doing to and what capitalism was doing. And so that same engine that drove that tried to make a human body, a machine, that tried to push a human body, that tried to experiment on what a human body could do, is the same mechanism and energy that's pushing capitalism today. It's just in a different form. When you think about Amazon workers and all the unions that are happening right now, where they're like working people and not giving them any wages, and people are dying on Amazon floors and they're stepping over the bodies and continuing work, telling people just keep working. It's like literally it's the same engine that's driving that. And so the more that you can study what the system of capitalism was and how it was built and experimented on, you will begin to, I don't know if you will, but you will begin to have a politics of refusal, to be like, wait a minute, hold up, why am I aligning myself with such a violent system? How can I divest from it a little bit? You're not going to be able to divest totally from it because you have to, live in a culture. There's this, the binary of working in both of those places, that's part of our life. But when we think about the animal, the horse was $100 on the plantation, the black child was $25, and this idea that you're saying about how we look at animals and then we look at ourselves, because animals, they look at as a being, they don't even see us as humans. And so I think they see us as pure machines, as a machine, not with any heart, blood, or anything. It is a machine level pace. It's unsustainable level, machine level pace of automation they're trying to push a body to. And so when you think about that, just the more you can get into the history of what the culture was doing, I think it will open up a little bit of space for you to begin to experiment. Well, how can I divest from that a little bit? How can I spend a little bit, a couple moments? Maybe I'll just stare at a tree and not run to the next appointment. Maybe I'll answer an email a little bit shorter. Maybe I'll do these little subversive things that like slow down my labor a little bit. Maybe I'll think about how I push other people, how I have boundaries, how I try to have my own boundaries. You'll begin to craft this care practice around yourself and around others, and how you move and how you deal with each other and how you expect so much from each other and expect so much from yourself, and then see not the beauty of your humanness being enough right now, and that you can have this radical idea of believing and trusting in yourself and understanding that there's always another way, another world, another way is possible. Just know that.
And with that, please give our
Yay! I'm so happy to be here. It's been a beautiful. Thank you.
A quick note, I forgot to thank the Woodson Center for Interracial Education for providing our department students with books.
Oh,
Yes.
oh.
Trisha Hersey books.
Thank
I
you.
also want to encourage everyone to go to the Eco Sense fashion show tonight at 6 p.m. in the Woodson Center, hosted by Woodson, BCC, and ECL, organized by lovely Serena Begley, who is our active speaker. And last but not least, our artist in residence speaks to us on February 21st. We hope you'll join us in 2 weeks for that.
Yay.
Thank you for attending. I hope to see you again. Thank you, Reverend Hershey.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful time. Thank you, my dear. I loved it. Thank you. Got it in the good. Let me give this back to DP.